Hi there. So there's a bit of a disparity between entry and ride pricing currently. Lots of people prefer entry pricing, and I'm trying to figure out why. Because every time I try to start a new park from scratch, it never pans out the way I want it to, and I can't quite understand what's going on. For one thing, every time you add in a new ride to your park, your entry pricing shoots up quite a bit. This is normal, this feels fine, this is intended behavior. Although over time, your entry price will actually slowly diminish in value, and guests stay in the park for long enough that this can actually present an issue. Especially if you're just trying to get off the ground and you're only getting like 10 to 20 guests at a time. That's not really enough to make up for the enormous maintenance costs that these rides have. I have a feeling that it has to do with the overall value of your park, and as rides age, they have less appeal to guests and therefore less value. The reason I suggest this is because sometimes if you have the maintenance cost bug that sometimes happens, you can end up with a price that looks something like 600 for your entry. This was actually posted to the subreddit, and apparently it's potentially based on the maintenance costs. So the value of your park is factoring in also the charge that the rides will have when you eventually fix them. And this is confirmed to have fixed the problem by deleting and replacing the ride. It seems to be an amalgam of the value of your park, which you can only get up to a certain point before it starts diminishing again. If you place down a couple coasters too, that helps with value, same as rides. Slowly losing your park value just doesn't feel good, period. And it's not super clear to me that this is the best solution for getting a park off the ground if you want to start with entry pricing, which I was never under the impression that actually worked. And in practice, it doesn't. I get 4 rides in and eventually I hemorrhage money until I try to move on to something else. And so I've actually put together several parks, not just the first one, just to make sure that this actually kind of works out the way I want it to. And to a degree, I'm fine, but when I start actually trying to meet guests' needs, I end up with $500 in the hole and I can't recover because all of my rides require some form of maintenance, and I can't really change that. And every time I refresh the entrance gate to see what price it is, it goes down by like 13 cents every couple of seconds. It's a variable amount every time too, and it seems like the rides aging decreases their value. Although somehow at the same time, their maintenance cost is supposed to factor in. So I'm not really sure how to square that circle. I did happen to try a different format as well, where I tried to do a speedrun park, but instead for the entry pricing model. It's a little tricky at first to get used to. I tried to do everything that I normally would for a park that scale and size, but it just didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. The usual flow for this is you accumulate enough research points so that you can unlock raft flumes and then use them to gather a whole bunch of guest excitement. But in this particular park, it just didn't pan out that way. You might see here I have plenty of guests queuing up for the raft flume, and the dispatch is actually taking longer, which I think was changed in Update 9. It's affecting roller coasters too, to a lot of people's dismay, to be honest. And I'm pretty sure the change was actually to nerf my strategy here for raft flumes specifically, but it kind of had a negative effect on the rest of the game as well. So sorry if you're listening and that's really bugging you about your current park. I may be to blame for that. I have a feeling that somehow the entry gates factor in ride experience for everything in your park. So here's the general concept. Having rides off to the side so that guests can ride your most popular and interesting attraction that there is in your park. It just makes sense, right? Have them all ride the one ride that has the most throughput and can give you the most money in bang for your buck. Doesn't have any maintenance associated with it whatsoever. But for this particular mode of play, it just doesn't pan out the way that you'd want it to. I could be doing everything right, and eventually I'll just run out of money. entirely. And you may be seeing that at this point too. I just can't get enough for the one raft flume that I have to make sense. I'm kind of stagnating at 14k, maybe 13.5k. I need 20 in order to place a second raft flume, and guests aren't entering the park quickly enough for this to matter. They're all kind of queuing, and I don't have any control over how many of them can queue. The problem here is you can't set dynamic pricing, so the guests that would be priced out are just getting in line anyway, and that line will fill up until the point that they're waiting 20 minutes to get on the ride. And that's 20 in-game minutes, so that's a long time for a guest to be in a park to ride one attraction and then leave. The idea for entry-level pricing is you want to get a guest on and off a ride as quickly as possible, specifically in and out of your park as fast as you can, without ruining the guest experience too much. And that's not an easy thing to do, requires a lot of knowledge. For this third challenge park I'm working on, I'm just doing everything from the first park, but with bargain pricing to show you the difference. And I'm trying to play as legitimate and normal as I typically would. Usually I have a method of, when I don't really care about how the park looks, building a massive line in the center with maybe a couple branches out in the future. That's when I want to take it semi-seriously and don't want to spam raft flumes around. But you can tell already I'm making some money. Although it's draining a little bit as it goes, I'm making a lot in doses. And because I'm playing with bargain pricing, it means that I can set dynamic prices for the rides that I don't want the guests to pool at for that long, or I can make more money if there are lots of guests queuing for it. This kind of makes up the difference, and it's really important to do. If you're not already doing this in your parks, you should really consider it. It's something from the career mode tutorial. It's there for a reason. You can see I have all of the same amenities that I previously did in a different park, and yet everything is smooth sailing. I even hire a mechanic. They go around and service all of the rides, and then I'm cash flow positive for a good long time, which is actually the way that I think the developers balance the game. I don't think that the game is necessarily balanced around full entry pricing mechanics to come into play. I have a feeling that it's based instead around just how much you can make per ride or what the ride experience is. And I'm not really sure how they balance that in the future. Maybe they just don't want people to have entry pricing when you start a park. Although I feel like having more options is probably a good thing. So I'm not entirely sure. And at some point, if you were to pivot into full entry pricing, and I have done this before, I end up just hemorrhaging tons of money because so many people and guests in the park want to stay for as long as possible. And I end up losing hundreds of thousands per day that I'm in the park. This actually happened in one of my speedrun parks, pre-update 8. When I updated, I had full entry pricing on, and it just was never the same. I don't understand why some people's parks have actual cash flow positivity in them. Maybe it has to do with some of the shops and stalls, and I could have leaned more into that. But that shouldn't have been that big of a margin for it to matter. I guess what I'm saying here is if you actually bother with any of the game's mechanics in the terms of making money and getting off the ground quickly, there is no other real option than bargain pricing or even dynamic pricing. So you may need to suspend your disbelief a little bit, but you know, guests have unlimited pockets, so I don't think that your suspension of disbelief is going to be broken that much by not having full entry like most real life parks do, which is a strange thought if you think about it. Makes you wonder why we're given these different types of pricing options when one is clearly superior to another. With that said, this video is just a snapshot of what's happening when you start up a park for the first time. I don't necessarily know what happens once you get past 10 rides or try to go into the end game. And honestly, it's a little nerve-wracking to try and get to that point in the first place. It feels like it needs to be either one or the other. So If you can fill me in with your experience somehow, I would love to hear it. Thank you for watching this little video. Hopefully we can put this mystery together and make full entry pricing viable. I appreciate you. Have a good one. Bye, YouTube.